Joining me earlier was Sky News political editor Andrew Clennell. Andrew Clennell, thanks for joining me. How important is this fight over opening the borders?
Well, it's vitally important because the Queensland tourism industry, for example, is so important to Australia, and the Prime Minister's made it clear he wants to see that gaping hole in the international tourism industry filled by domestic tourism. And until we see a situation where the borders are open between the states and therefore flights are going, because they won't be with the borders shut, even if there's an isolation period or some borders are shut and some not, businesses are going to be going broke, jobs are going to be lost, and we're going to lose a lot of money. And I guess there was always going to be this concern or situation when some states eradicated the virus, as I believe Western Australia certainly has, and the Northern Territory and South Australia, and other states still have low community transmission. Funny thing is, Queensland does appear to have the odd occasion of low community transmission, so they should be less sensitive than other states. But this is going to be a battle going forward, and Simon Birmingham, the Tourism Minister, he gave us some comments today making it clear that if the states wanted to keep their borders shut, it would be on them to compensate or support their tourism industry, and a point well made. This is a real quandary going forward, and it's yet another thing National Cabinet is going to have to sort out. Just when you thought they'd sorted out the restrictions, here's the next problem.
Well, I can't quite understand this one, because obviously Queensland tourism industry would be desperate for the borders to be lifted, yet you've got the New South Wales Premier arguing for borders being lifted sooner rather than later, yet you've got Queensland and Western Australia very much against. How does that work?
Well, Queensland, I believe, will open them, but what Annastacia Palaszczuk said today is that it might be the September school holidays. Even her Chief Health Officer indicated that might be July, but by then it's too late to book. So it really needs to be a signal of when it's going to happen now for people to book for, say, the July school holidays. WA, I was born in Sydney, grew up in WA. I know that they'd probably like to keep the borders shut forever, Andrew, and I only half joke on that, but there'll be enormous popularity behind Mark McGowan for keeping them shut. They won't want the virus. However, they will have to open, no doubt about it. It's in the best interest of Australia at some point. So if that's the argument, the states eventually have to open, well, the sooner the better, really, in terms of economic activity and saving jobs, which, you know, is much more of a concern now than the virus in Australia. And from Queensland's point of view, yeah, I don't really understand it. Annastacia Palaszczuk seems to be saying, let's try intrastate travel first in the first couple of months, then we'll look at it. But I don't see it being a different situation from New South Wales and Victoria then. I still see low levels of cases then, some community transmission, but very small. That's what we hope for anyway. And if that's the case, what's the difference between doing it now and doing it in September, other than you're costing yourself a whole bunch of jobs and a whole bunch of business?
Well, that's what's so frustrating, Andrew. I mean, I'm particularly amazed by South Australia, right, on this. It hasn't had a new infection for 2 weeks. It hasn't had anyone sick with the virus since Friday. And yet you've got people not allowed to go to pubs there. You've got people not allowed to do dining inside in restaurants. You've got all these restrictions still. It's just nuts. I mean, the federal government must be tearing its hair out about the over-cautiousness of the premiers and what that's doing to the economy.
And I think, as you see often with politics these days, Andrew, it's governed by polling. But on this issue, people are showing common sense, and the polling moves very quickly. And there's even been some suggestion to me the Victorian polling may have shown opening up was a lot more popular, and that's why Dan Andrews moved quicker than we thought. So the polling initially said we're all worried about the health thing overall and we support the shutdowns. As they see low numbers, the community obviously says, well, hang on, the numbers are so low. Let's open up as quick as we can. And it seems like politicians are caught on the back foot a bit, waiting for those results before they act, rather than just using common sense themselves. You're absolutely right. I mean, WA's opened up, Queensland opened up a bit, but they can move quicker, and South Australia is a good example in particular. Everything should be open there. I mean,
absolutely,
no cases at all, and they're killing jobs.
Absolutely. You'd be as likely to find a unicorn in Rundle Mall as someone with the coronavirus. The international coronavirus inquiry the government's been pushing for, and I'll give it full marks for pushing and withstanding China's threats. But I'm just wondering how much hope the government has that it's actually going to get one that is independent, that's really going to get to the bottom of what happened in China.
Well, there are concerns around this. I mean, a month ago, Maurice Payne was saying we need an investigation, and if the WHO were to do it, it could be poacher turned gamekeeper. You know, Australia declared a pandemic through Scott Morrison about a month before the WHO did. There's evidence the WHO just didn't do enough. So if you ask them to investigate themselves, is it the proper investigation we need? And I guess Maurice Payne and the government are pointing to a particular section of the motion tonight to identify the zoonotic source of the virus and the route of introduction to the human population, including the possible use of intermediate hosts, which means it will implicate China, even if it doesn't mention China, and also a stepwise process of impartial, independent and comprehensive evaluation. Well, you always say a full internal independent inquiry, don't you? So that's the concerns. The government's point of view at this point is they push for the inquiry. They're a bit out on their own. Everyone else has come on board. That's a victory. And they just want to get this motion over the line, probably Tuesday night, Wednesday morning our time. And then they know they need to worry about what form it will take, whether it's the proper investigation. But for them, this is a big step just to get to this point.
Well, I think the government and Labor will both want this controversy to die away, and they'll take whatever scraps they're given on this one. I think we've fought the fight and we've probably lost, but we shall see. Andrew Clennell, thank you so much for your time.